Here on Wham Baam Dashcam, we've shown you over 1,000 dashcam videos sent in by our fans, and we serve up 20 new ones every week. Today we're showcasing some of the craziest clips we've ever featured, so buckle up for Wham Baam Dashcam's Worst Drivers of Pennsylvania, Volume 1. Lewis was being followed closely by the driver of a black Honda. As he rounded a curve, the Honda driver took the opportunity to speed around Lewis before losing control. The Honda driver went too fast into the curve and slid into a parked SUV. Lewis stopped to check on the occupants, and neither of them were seriously injured. Lewis called 911, but he told us the police never responded. Instead, 2 tow trucks arrived to take both vehicles away. Evidently, the owner of the SUV wasn't home at the time, but Lewis sent a copy of his dashcam footage to one of their neighbors. Imagine coming home and finding that. Watch what happened to Mike while he was heading home. Mike had been spending the night at a friend's house and was on his way home on Sunday morning when an SUV driver ran a red light and T-boned his Prius 2 blocks from home. By the time Mike crawled out of the passenger side, the driver of the SUV was out and telling a bystander that Mike had run a red light and nearly killed her. She then filed a claim with her insurance provider saying Mike was at fault. Mike sent her insurance provider, the same provider he uses, a copy of his dashcam footage, and they told him he had nothing to worry about. They paid him enough to replace his 2017 Prius with a brand new 2022 Prius a week later. Mike told us he can't recommend a dashcam enough and that they really are the best investment any vehicle owner can make. This week's first video comes to us from Scranton, Pennsylvania. A Honda driver pulled out in front of our submitter's Audi A4. Even though he honked and swerved, he wasn't able to avoid a collision. Police responded, and so did the owner of the Honda, who turned out to be the daughter of the elderly woman who'd been driving. She gave her mom a piece of her mind, while the cops gave our submitter a ride home. This submitter was driving down Pennsylvania Avenue when the driver of an SUV suddenly pulled out in front of him. Our submitter stood on the brake pedal, but he told us he's stunned that he didn't smash into the other car. He also said the other driver was either oblivious or really wanted to be featured on Wham Baam Dashcam. Trevor was driving when he watched a Honda driver pull out in front of traffic before colliding head-on with an oncoming vehicle and sending it careening toward Trevor's Subaru Impreza. Trevor stopped and called 911, then checked on the driver of the red car while others assisted the driver of the tan Honda. Police arrived within minutes while paramedics took a little longer to respond. Interestingly, one of the state police pointed out that the Honda had some kind of classic vehicle license plate on it, which the officer found to be a little sus. Lauren was on her way to work when she watched a Chevy Spark get rear-ended by another driver who never even tapped the brakes before the impact. Lauren suspects the driver of the red car was on their phone when they clipped the back of the Chevy, pushing it under the trailer of a semi-truck we can see earlier in the video. She gave a copy of her footage to responding police. She hasn't heard any updates, but she told us she and her boyfriend are huge fans of our videos and our merch. Thanks, you two! If you want some for yourself, the link to our merch store is in the video description. Ash was on her way to a medical appointment and had stopped in a left turn lane when a Ford SUV whose driver wasn't paying attention slammed into the back of her Nissan Pathfinder. The impact ripped the data cable out of the rear dashcam, which is why the video cut off instantly. Thankfully, first responders arrived quickly once 911 was called. The story doesn't end there. While Ash and her 2 daughters were all okay, the driver responsible was uninsured, and they were driving a rental car, and they even used a fake driver's license. All of this means Nate and Ash's lawyers are having a hard time figuring out who was even driving the Ford. Ash even ended up losing her job because she doesn't have a way to get to work anymore. We're all praying that the case is resolved and that everything goes back to normal. This submitter had entered an intersection on a green light and was waiting for oncoming traffic to clear when the light turned yellow, then red. Watch what an oncoming driver did well after her light was red. The other driver ran her red light, and only our submitter's quick reflexes prevented him from being involved in a head-on collision that would have definitely been the other driver's fault. Then, the thing we all wish for when something like this happens, happened. A police officer was right behind the oblivious offender, and he immediately pulled her over for some instant justice. Nice! Nish was on his way to night classes when a driver from the right side suddenly entered the road in front of him, and he wasn't able to stop fast enough to avoid a collision. Nish plowed into the Subaru, setting off his airbag and sending him rolling off the road. His Chevy Impala was totaled by his insurance company. Thankfully, nobody was seriously injured. Responding officers found the Subaru driver at fault after Nish called 911. He wanted to shout out Officer Plymouth for giving him a ride back to his apartment. Chrissy was driving her Subaru Ascent when an oncoming driver made an unprotected turn across her lane. Both drivers stopped and waited for the police. Sadly, both vehicles were totaled. The other driver claimed he'd had a green arrow and that Chrissy's light must have been red. Thankfully, she was able to send her dashcam footage to his insurance provider, and they immediately accepted full responsibility. If you need a dashcam, check the description for our recommendation. Greg was about to make a left turn through an intersection after waiting for the light to turn green. Suddenly, a box truck from the right went cruising through a red light before colliding with a pickup truck. Greg stopped and checked on the driver of the black pickup, an older man who was spared injury by his airbags. He sent copies of his dashcam footage to the pickup driver as well as to the responding police. Jordan was on his way to work early on a Saturday morning when another driver nearly hit him as they ran a red light. Jordan can't help but wonder what would have happened if he'd entered the intersection just a second or two earlier. Thankfully, he was able to continue to work unscathed. Speaking of downed trees, Gio got stopped by one on his way home and had turned around and stopped to find another route. Suddenly, an SUV went driving past him, but the driver didn't notice the tree until it was too late. Gio estimates the Ford Edge hit the tree at about 35 miles per hour. He made sure the occupants were unharmed before calling 911, and police came and blocked off the road. In spite of the complication, he was able to get safely home. Gio told us he got his 2-channel dashcam just 2 weeks before this happened after being inspired to get one from watching Wham Bam videos. Cool! Janita was on her way to dinner with family in her Hyundai Elantra when the driver of a Jeep in the right lane turned in front of her and she wasn't able to avoid clipping it. Even though she stood on the brake pedal, Janita's Hyundai wasn't able to slow down quickly enough from 35 miles per hour to avoid a collision. The other driver immediately admitted fault. Janita told us she'd bought her dashcam only a month before this occurred, and she's glad she did. Thankfully, both drivers have the same insurance provider, so she expects the claim process to go smoothly. Wolfsbane was on his way home from meeting his wife at the mall after work when the driver of a red Jeep Compass failed to yield to him at a 4-way stop. Wolfsbane told us the Jeep driver claimed she hadn't seen his Chevy Cruze before proceeding into the intersection. He also told us her license was already suspended thanks to previous intoxicated driving. Brett was driving along late at night when he was suddenly confronted by headlights coming toward him in his own lane. Brett moved over and honked to alert the other driver that they were driving the wrong way, but they just honked back at him. That's when Brett remembered that he had passed a cop in traffic a moment earlier. Sure enough, the cop car's lights came on as it flipped around to chase after the wrong-way driver. Brett said he had a giddy laugh at the instant justice, and he imagines the cop and the other driver had a nice conversation. This emitter was driving in Pennsylvania when a pickup pulled out onto the road before clipping the back of his Toyota Corolla. Our submitter told us that the other driver's insurance provider is saying that he is 30% responsible because he didn't try to avoid getting hit. What do you think? Let us know in a comment who you think is at fault. Christian was following behind a Mercedes when the driver signaled to turn left. He thought she was moving to the right to allow him to pass, but then she turned left and stopped in the median. Christian wasn't expecting her to stop and rear-ended the Mercedes. Even though he thinks the accident was her fault, he had to pay to fix his Nissan Xterra out of his own pocket. He told us he's learned a lot from our channel and has since taken defensive driving classes, so he'll know how to avoid situations like this in the future. He also sent along a shout-out for his father, who helped him fix his truck. This submitter was driving when a biker behind him nearly rear-ended his Rivian R1T and had to swerve into oncoming traffic to avoid a collision. Hey, this is our first submission from a Rivian. Awesome! Our submitter told us he could tell the rider was embarrassed, but thankfully it was only a close call. Dave had his dashcam recording while he filled up the gas tank of his Honda Accord. Watch what the rear camera angle captured happening in the nearby intersection. Another driver leaving the gas station drove straight through a red light before T-boning a pickup truck. Dave walked over to check on the drivers. The SUV driver was shaken up, but thankfully neither of them were injured. Want to see what happens when someone makes a right on red when traffic isn't clear? This submitter was heading to Starbucks when a pickup driver turned through a red light without stopping and hit his Mazda CX-5. This is his first accident in a car he bought brand new less than a year ago. Both drivers exchanged information and the insurance investigation is still pending. Daniel encountered a Honda driver who seemed to be driving along with her hazard lights on for no reason. Out of the blue, she slammed on the brakes and started swerving around while waving her hand out of her window. She continued accelerating and braking while waving her hands for several more minutes. Based on the video Daniel sent us, we couldn't find any reason why she was doing this, and he told us he doesn't know either. Daniel said it looked like she was even taking pictures of him at one point. She eventually turned and they parted ways. He told us he loves all our channels, including Wham Bam Security Cam. Thanks, Daniel. Nathan was driving his Ford Explorer to work one morning when an F-250 Super Duty rolled into him after he stopped for a traffic light. How do we know it was a Super Duty? I don't know how you could miss that. The driver of the F-250 told Nathan he'd tried to stop, but his truck just kept rolling. Amazingly, neither pickup had any visible damage. After looking everything over, Nathan chose to continue to work rather than filing an insurance claim after what he called this Ford-on-Ford love tap. This submitter was on his way home from voting when he saw a car in the distance run into the side of a passing grain truck before being sent spinning off the road. Our submitter stopped and called 911. He told us the driver of the car looked to be uninjured, but he wasn't able to safely cross the road to check on them due to traffic. This submitter was driving along when an oncoming driver crossed double yellow lines to pass another vehicle, nearly hitting them in the process. Thankfully, our submitter got out of the way. He told us he thinks the guy was in a hurry to get home and see himself on Wham Bam Dashcam.